Okay. All right, before I start, does anyone have a issue that is in front of them that I can help with as have my broker input on?
I'd like a brief update as to what's happening with the location, because I haven't
All right,
seen it.
let's handle that online offline because
Okay,
it's
that's fine.
different for every office, and we have people from
Okay, I got it.
all over different offices here. So, Chris, you got anything that has crossed your desk this week as a TC that you is of interest? Should you want to share with the group?
Nothing massive that I can think of off the top of my head. I am dealing with a little bit of something in regards to an agent who wrote an offer and is about to wrap up the escrow process and has released all contingencies, and just found out that public sewer was lied about on the MLS.
Oh,
and they are on septic, and they close on Monday. So they're trying to figure that out.
How was this discovered?
Discovered through final walkthrough.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, so kind of interesting. They're using, it's a Lake County property, but they are using Southern California title company, and discovered partially through payoffs and whatnot that don't need to be paid off because it's not public. It's not connected to anything.
Are we representing the buyer or the seller?
We're representing buyer.
Okay, and how's the buyer feeling about this?
Buyer is still working through it. It's not, like I said, not my buyer. I'm just TC on the deal.
Yeah.
From what I understand is they're working through that information, trying to figure out how to proceed.
Yeah, okay, great. Well, it certainly would seem to me to be a major disclosure item that was overlooked or misrepresented. And is it do we know if it's in an area where it could be hooked up to public sewer?
I don't have that info.
Yeah, okay. If you don't mind me asking, who's the agent?
Paige Hotchkiss.
Paige, okay. I'll reach out to Paige today just to check in with what's going on.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
That's an interesting story. Amy asked the question, what was it, Amy? I saw it appear here. Was it a lie or a mistake or an oversight? We aren't sure, apparently, but I will check in with Paige. The listing agent, Chris, you're saying is from Southern California?
That's also an excellent question. I don't recall if they are from Southern California. I just recognize that we have the MLS profile on file and it's represented as public sewer and water.
Yeah, okay. That's yet to be determined, Amy. I'm sure we'll get to the bottom of it. Okay, so side to that, things that kind of come at us from out of the dark, and I'm going to mute you all unless you have something to say, just so we don't get background noise. But if you want to add something, just unmute yourself. But we've closed a sale 2 years ago. We represented the seller, and prior to their listing the property with us and the property going in the market and then being sold, the seller had listed the property with a vacation rental company, seeking to have a vacation rental on the property. And the vacation rental company, it's not our brokerage, it's a different one, brought several people through the property, but no one ever wrote a lease on it, or they never wrote a lease for anyone on a vacation rental basis or otherwise. So anyway, 2 years later, we get a letter from an attorney our client gets a letter from an attorney saying that the vacation rental company believes they're due an $88,000 share of the commission because they were procuring cause for the sale. Because they showed the buyer the house one time during the vacation rental period. So we don't have much more than that, other than on a request from a lawyer. Our client asked us to assist them, and we did identify some attorneys that they might work with. And so that's something we can help our clients with, is identifying resources. And it appears, looking at the form, we don't have their form, whatever form the vacation rental company might have in their file. But looking at the listing form for vacation rentals, there is such a thing in the CAR. There is a paragraph in it that says the leasing company would earn a commission if the tenant buys the property during the term of their occupancy, or during the term of the lease. Well, there was no lease. So how they could claim the commission under that paragraph, I have no idea. And then, of course, there's the exceptions. When the lease expires, or the listing agreement expires, you can file an exception of parties that have seen the property, if you've done your paperwork properly. And I didn't even look in that particular form whether that has that same provision, but assuming it did, that has a finite period of time at which it would be valid, 30 days, 90 days, not a substantial period of time. This buyer bought the property some 6 months after they first saw the property, I think. So anyway, those facts are yet to be determined, but it does sound like a bit of the attorney I spoke to give the client as a referral says, well, it sounds like a shakedown to me. And it very well may be. But the lesson here is, if you get your client gets that kind of letter and passes it on to us, we can be as helpful as possible. Our fiduciary duty ends at the end of the transaction. So we no longer have a fiduciary duty with that party, but our agent, whose client this is, has sold them, or has sold properties and helped them buy properties, about 10 different properties over the course of 10 or 15 years. So obviously we want to keep a good relationship with them and help them out as much as we can. The other thing, in the letter from the attorney demanding the commission, they asked that it be mediated, because the listing agreement had a mediation clause in it. And we assured our client that if it does go to a mediation, that we would be willing to attend with them, so they wouldn't be alone there. They could go with their attorney, we would attend. We aren't participants. No one's asked us for anything here other than support. And but often we will go to a mediation that the clients agreed to go to, just to sit and be support them. So, but anyway, if your client gets a letter like that and you have it, and you should pass it on to me or your manager, so we can get we can respond appropriately. Any questions on that? Okay. A question came up this week about the cancellation of a listing. We had a listing, our agent had a listing on a property. The client wanted to cancel the listing because they wanted to take the property off the market. They decided they didn't want to sell it any longer. And our agent was agreeable to that. it runs through the end of March, the listing, the original listing did. So the question becomes is, do we cancel the listing or just do we withdraw it from the MLS as a withdrawal, temporary withdrawal, and that the listing remains in place just in case the seller sells it in the next 30 days during the term of our listing still. Or wants to relist the property that we still have the listing. So that's something you should clarify with the client when there's a request to cancel a listing. Ask them if they're wanting to cancel the listing or just withdraw it from marketing for now, and the listing can just exist for as long as it is in the paperwork. So there is a distinction there between canceling and withdrawing it from the MLS. Any questions there? Okay. That leads to, well, I'm going to cover the residential income RPA first because I have that pulled up. We got a question, the property was 4 units, and our agent who had a question whether we would use the RPA form or the residential income property form. So the residential income property form, that's what I have pulled up here. Residential income purchase agreement, RIPA, and this is to be used for 4 or more units, up to 4 units, a duplex or a triplex. We would use the RPA. But when you get into 4 units or more, that's when you would switch to this form. And it has a grid similarly. It just has a different additional language about the tenant occupancy and some more info about the tenants, estoppel certificates and things like that. So that's when we would use this form. Let's see. I want to go. And I'm using this new. Let's see when I add the form. Okay. Let's see. I want to use the RLA. Oops, sorry. Are there any questions about that? Let's see here. Back. Okay, that's right. So a similar question came up about multiple. We have a listing of a property that has 4 different occupiable units on it. It's zoned residential, and there is an ADA and other properties, other buildings on the property. And the question is, should it be listed in the MLS as a multi-unit property? And since it's zoned single, it's zoned residential, and the most likely buyer is going to be a single person, using the main house and using the outbuildings for other purposes. I said I didn't think it was appropriate to list it as a multifamily, even though it had 4 units on it. All right, so here we have the RLA, and we're getting back to this exemption clause that we've gone over several times. So in paragraph B, let's see, we're in 3B. So we're due a commission if the completion of a sale is prevented by the property, blah, 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 damage, blah, 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 blah. Pay broker selling, but okay, that's not it. Where's this? Okay, it's actually under 3A2. So this is talking about when we're due a commission. And under 3A2 up here, it says if within so many days, you need to put a number in there. You know, if you don't put a number in there, then it's not valid. So, you know, put a number in there when you're listing a property. If within 90 days, A, after the end of the listing period or any extension, or after any cancellation of the agreement, unless otherwise agreed, seller enters into a contract to sell, convey, lease, or otherwise transfer the property to anyone known as a prospective buyer, or that person's related entity, one, who physically entered and was shown the property during the listing period or any extension by broker or cooperating broker, or two, for whom broker or any cooperating broker submitted to seller a signed written offer to acquire, blah, 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 blah. However, the seller shall have no obligation to the broker under this paragraph unless not later than the end of the listing period, broker has given seller a written notice of the names of such prospective buyers. So, you know, this is, you know, often referred to as the protection clause or the exemption clause. So if you have a listing, you've shown it to multiple people, and you the listing is expiring, the seller is not going to renew with you, and you put a number in here, then you need to give that seller a list of these prospective buyers, not later than the expiration date. So that means you really need to do it beforehand. So it's a good standard of practice to do that. If you're writing up the listing, to have that protection clause, have a date in there. And then if the circumstances come up when the listing's expiring, you give them a list prior to the expiration date. So that kind of the day before or the week before. Don't do it a few days after, because that won't be effective then. Okay. Any questions on that? And as they covered in the webinar last week on the buyer representation agreement, the buyer broker representation agreement, there's a similar clause in that agreement where you can list the properties where you've shown that buyer and you are protected for a period of time that is specified in the agreement. You had to put a number in there. That for those, if the buyer goes back and buys one of those properties, you already showed them. So just doubling back to the procuring cause question and the demand for mediation that we got, I started the meeting with. Procuring cause is a complicated matter. There's, I think, 17 factors that are identified as factors leading to being a procuring cause. And with buyers, obviously having a broker representation agreement is one of them, a very strong one. So if you have one of those agreements, you're pretty, you know, you're in pretty good shape for being procuring cause if that buyer wanders off and buys from the listing agency. We've heard of that happening. But otherwise, let's say it's your listing or it's not your listing, but you have a buyer, you don't have a buyer broker's agreement, but you still feel you were procuring cause. The heavy preponderance of support is going to go to the person who wrote the offer. Because the factor that you wrote the offer is pretty important in being the procuring cause. So you might have shown a buyer a property And maybe you showed it before, anyone else showed it to them. But then they went and wrote an offer with somebody else. That party that wrote the offer is more than likely going to be identified as the procuring cause, because that's what the buyer wanted to do. They wanted to write that offer through that other party. Another good reason to have the broker representation agreement. Okay. Question came up about open houses. Okay. One of our newer agents called me yesterday and said, can I hold an open house for this other broker? My friend works at the other brokerage, and he says I can hold his house open. He has a listing. He said I could hold it open. Well, we've had practice tips on this. So this goes back to August of 2022, when this practice tip came out. And this is the pitfall of holding open houses for other brokers' listings. And basically, it's problematic. And in fact, agents should refrain from this practice, is what this says. DRE prohibits agents from one brokerage holding homes open for agents from another brokerage. So if the DRE doesn't like it, we don't like it. It's an agency issue. The courts don't like it. There's liability and so forth and so on. So the risk management tip is, for a good reason, the DRE has taken the position that it's illegal for agents from one brokerage to hold open houses listed with other brokerages. The way of avoiding this, if you really want to do that, is to enter in a co-listing agreement with the seller and that other broker. So, I mean, if you're really going to work on the thing together in an ongoing basis, just enter in a co-listing agreement, and you don't have to be paid half of it. Maybe you get paid 10% of the commission or something like that. But that's how to avoid the risk and the illegality of holding an open house for another brokerage. Okay, and everybody clear on that? And I did sell this new agent. I said, we're light in listings right now. Everybody is kind of light in listings. So, but keep your ear to the ground, talk to the agents who do listings, and, see if they have anything coming up, and tell them you want to do the open houses. And they say, well, I do my own open houses on the weekend. This is within our brokerage. And they said, well, I do my own open houses and on the weekends. And they say, okay, well, can I maybe hold it open Friday night or Wednesday afternoon? Or, I've driven through neighborhoods and seen open house signs and, during days that aren't the typical tour days, or weekends, during weekdays. Just go hold and put out an open house sign, get some flyers made, and see if you can drum up some traffic. That's what I encouraged him to do. Question came up about this can occur rather frequently. Our agent was looking to take a listing on a property, and there haven't been many sales or comps sales in that match this house. It's a particular neighborhood, and there haven't been any sales in the last 6 months or so. And how do they go about pricing this? And or let's say there have been sales of 3-bedroom 2-baths in the neighborhood, but not a 2-bedroom 2-bath, which is what the house is that they're going to be listing. How do they adjust for the other bedroom? So that's part of our skill in pricing, coming up with those numbers, even though there might not be comps. You can revert to square footage, price per square foot. In this particular case, the house was as large as the 3-bedroom 2-bath homes that sold, even though it only had 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. So it had larger rooms. It had a second living room or of sorts. I don't know exactly what it was, but applying a square footage price is always an option. You can use that little form that I pass out to you periodically about the average price appreciation over a period of time. So if they bought the house in 2016 and it's now 2023, 24, you can plug in a price on that sheet and it'll show what the appreciation was over that period of time. And that's another way to check your number. The key in this case was that they were going to list the property now, but they were going to take a couple months to get it ready to put on the market. You know, some cleanup, some staging, this and that. So it's going to be about 6 weeks, 2 months before the property actually came on the market. I said, okay, well, say this is, you know, I would say to the client, this is our best guess of the price today. Let's agree on that. But let's watch the market for the next 2 months and see what happens and see what your competition is when the property comes on the market. And let's revisit the price then before going on the market. So you can always execute the listing at a certain price. You have to have a price to have a valid listing. But it could be a placeholder. You know, we would use that term. We just have a placeholder price until until the property is actually coming on the market, and we review it just before it goes on the market and set a price that we think is appropriate at that time. Okay. Okay, I got one more thing, and that came up in conversation yesterday, and apparently CalFair Plan, which is the property insurance vehicle of choice in many of our markets and for many of our properties, keeps changing their underwriting criteria, and is according to the feedback I got yesterday, taking about a month to underwrite property for property insurance. Yeah. The agent is listing a property and she often goes and gets a quote for the insurance. And this is what a good listing agent will do. They go to their go-to insurance person, part of their team, and get a quote for insurance on the property, so they can say, well, I have one quote of this, so they can represent to a potential buyer at least some idea of what the property insurance might be. But in this case, the go-to insurance agent said, well, I can't really get you a quote for about a month. So that's problematic. But it just shows the importance of getting on top of the property insurance side of the equation in a transaction, when in a real estate transaction these days. It's always important, but it's much more important now because of the backlog and the different insurance companies that aren't in the marketplace anymore. Another agent said they had a $4,000 quote from an insurance company during the transaction process. And then they got to closing and it was a $6,000 policy when they got to closing. So nobody's happy when that happens. So just get on top of the insurance, make sure you know a good insurance broker that you can call on and rely upon. Sometimes you need to have more than one because some are, you know, better or busier or whatever. And, you know, these things are pricey enough that it's prudent to suggest your buyer get more than one quote on their insurance. The other thing that came up in this underwriting issue is that the insurance companies are wanting certain photos of the property before they can complete their underwriting. I was told that they want to have photographs of the area between underneath all sinks to see that there's no leaks. So, you know, let's say you have a kitchen sink, and as typically I know my kitchen sink underneath the kitchen sink is all full of stuff. And you got to pull all that out and take a picture of it and send it to the insurance. Well, and apparently the insurance agent was asking the buyer and or the agent to provide them with photographs. And my opinion is that's not really good for us to do those photographs. We might be potentially have some liability for what the underwriter sees in those photographs, good or bad or not. And it might come around. It's not within our, at least now, and it's never been within our standard of practice to be taking photographs for insurance companies. That's just not something we're licensed to do. So if you're getting that kind of request, my first response would be to push back on that and say, sorry, insurance agent, you know, I'll make an appointment for you to come see the house and take your photos, but we don't take photos of the property for that insurance purposes. Does that make sense? Have any of you gotten that request?
I have, Gary.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so they did ask to take pictures of underneath the sink, and
okay.
I did it, so we'll see how that works out.
Well, I mean, can't say a whole lot of liability there, but my first pushback would be say, we don't really take photographs for insurance companies, so I can make an arrangements for you to come see the house, Mr. Agent, and do your job. So that would be my first instance. And then they said, well, then we're not going to, you know, I had the thing that came up in the meeting yesterday was the buyer was asked by the insurance agent to take photos. And the buyer did, but they weren't good photos. So the agent came back around and did what, you know, I guess were better photos. But if the buyer is asked to do it by their insurance agent, they'd go do it. And that's, you know, that's between the buyer and the insurance agent. But I don't think it's within our job description to be taking photographs for insurance agents or insurance brokers.
Thank you for that clarity.
Okay, yeah. If you get pushback, let me know about it, because we want to know how the industry is tracking. I mean, if it becomes a standard of practice for real estate agents to take photographs for insurance agents, then yeah, we do what the practice of real estate requires. But to my knowledge, it's certainly not the standard of practice at this point. Thanks for bringing that up, Bernadette.
No problem.
Sure. Well, that's all on my list today. I don't know what our time frame is here, but happy to answer any other questions that may be there. Let's see. I think I had one more thing I was going to share here. Oh yeah. Okay. Prop 19 flyer. Okay. This is I was in a sales meeting the other day and asked the agents if they all had a working understanding of Proposition 19, and about half of them did. Okay, so certainly if you don't know the full details of Proposition 19, because there are a lot of specific provisions in it, like inter-family transfer of properties and how that affects the tax basis. There is some provisions of Prop 19 that deals with farm properties, family farms. I'm not familiar myself with all of those details, but so this is a good chance for us to learn more. and a great chance for us to touch our clients by sharing this with them, this invitation. John Tudor is a Napa County tax assessor, but he can speak on Prop 19 because it's a statewide law. And I asked him whether we could, have our Humboldt and Lake and Mendocino agents involved in this, and they said, sure. The local practices may be a little different, but the law is the law, and that's what he's going to cover. Yeah, Amy, got a question?
I noticed that the link on the flyer doesn't work. So I'm not able to send it out to my clients because it doesn't work.
I just hit the link, right? And it comes up with this registration form.
Yeah, it doesn't do that on my end. So I can't send it out to my clients because the link isn't working for me.
Okay. That may be your computer. I mean, you could send the link back, send the flyer back to me, and I'll see if it works for me. But even if it doesn't work on your computer, I wouldn't hesitate to send it out because it may work on their computer. And if it doesn't work on their computer, it's a good chance to talk to them, right? Don't be judged.
I would prefer to have a copy of the actual link to send
Yes,
out.
and Kylie, I saw Kylie sent that to you the other day. Did you get that email
Let's see.
from her? I asked her to send you the actual link.
I think you did, huh?
Yeah. So if any of you are having a problem with the form, we can produce the actual link, and the HTTP address for the registration link, and you can send that along with the flyer.
Yeah,
You see it there?
yeah, I do.
Okay.
So I'll just send a copy of this with the flyer in case the link doesn't work for that.
Yeah. And, often you see those kind of things where it says, in case you're having trouble logging on, use this address, So,
Yeah, I don't even have that, so.
Yeah. So that wouldn't hurt to supply with your email, but I know I've registered just with that here button on the flyer, so.
So let's see.
Couple other people say yes too.
Yeah,
Okay.
it says the content's blocked. Contact the site owner to fix the issue. So I can't do it.
And that's when you click the here button or the link. So,
No, when I just hit the Zoom link off the flyer, I
okay. That's a tech problem I'm
yeah.
can't help with, but I know it works for some of us.
Yeah.
But go ahead. Did you try that? Did you hit on that other link, the actual?
I have a copy of the other link, so
Yeah, hit on that and see what
I'm
happens.
sure that, let's see if yes, I can do it that way.
Okay, great.
Okay, cool.
Okay. But I find with some of these SOI events that we schedule that sometimes an agent will make a judgment that, oh, my clients wouldn't be interested in that, so they don't send it out. My point in all of these, when we plan these things, is that it's a real good chance to send our clients an invitation to something of value. They may not want to do it, which is just fine. And we aren't counting the number of people who attend, we're counting the number of people we invite. And that's what the important thing is to get this out to people. And they realize, oh, Amy's doing something good for me, even though I'm not interested. She's offering me a nice invitation. That's the point. Okay. Okay, any other questions? I'll be sending that form out again a few times more before it comes up in March, so. Sorry if you've already dealt with it, and I'll just keep encouraging those that are, maybe have. All right, we do have that training next week. I think it's Monday through Thursday, Samantha, is that right? Or no, it's not Monday, Tuesday through Friday?
Tuesday
Yeah,
through
Tuesday.
Friday.
Okay. I will probably still plan to have my contract training class next Friday, but we'll see how that goes and I'll let everyone know. All right. Good. Chris Brown put that link, thanks, Chris, in the chat box too, if you want to go in there and copy it, just in case you can have it. It's in the chat box. All right then. Well, everyone have a good weekend. I think it's going to rain again. So stay dry. Thanks, everybody. Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.